Hello everyone, this is SWTOR Snoopy here, back with another SWTOR Pug video. Today I have for you guys another SWTOR Pug discussion video. In today's discussion video, we're going to be talking about the content from SWTOR. Now this discussion isn't going to be like an in-depth analysis of stuff that was actually cut from the game, just the bits and pieces. Essentially this is going to be me going over, a few of the things that were cut from the game, and just kind of my opinions and views on why I think that might have been the case. And that is essentially what this discussion video is going to be all about. So I hope you guys enjoy this SWTOR Pug video. As always, if you guys enjoy these videos, then make sure to leave a like. And if you guys want some gaming mints, then check the link in the description down below, Cartel's gaming mints. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this video, and I'll see you guys in the discussion. Alrighty guys, so let's get into this discussion right now. So first off, I'm just gonna make this clear. I did do a video about 2 years ago in this area that I am roaming around. If you didn't know, and if you're curious why this looks very similar to the black hole, this is actually the original area for the black hole before they designed it into a daily area. There is a way to actually get to it. In Star Wars Republic, it is obviously hard to get to. You gotta go slightly out of the map to just go ahead and get here. But if you guys are wondering, that is actually where I'm currently at. And I feel like that's also, this is kind of like a good place to just really be at, just when talking about this stuff. So the main thing with Star Wars Republic is there's a lot of databases, for example, Jedipedia, and also a TOR community. I will have a link in the description down below for both of these sites. But essentially, they are websites where they go through the files. Or essentially, they have the files of Star Wars Republic, and they allow players to really just see NPCs, just dialogue, just essentially everything relating to the game, just in the files they actually have. And the one thing that is very notable about these sites that a lot of people have noticed is that there was content that was in the game, essentially, voice lines and all that different stuff, but none of it was actually present, or essentially they didn't have stuff that was available. For example, we were supposed to have Chapter 4, which was going to continue our class stories. There's supposed to be different planets. The Dreadmaster story arc was going to be different, and just in general, a lot of stuff was going to kind of play out in a different manner than how they did. The main thing that a lot of people talk about is how the first expansion wouldn't originally have Makeb. There was just really, it seemed like there's going to be a lot more content that was going to be available in the game. And that is something that a lot of people were definitely curious about, because obviously, like I said, cut content is always something that does, interest a lot of players, because they want to know about the stuff that was going to be in the game. But obviously the details are very, very vague. But essentially, if you go through these sites, like I said, I will put the link in the description down below for both of these sites. But if you just search around on those sites, just mess around with them, you can likely find some content that isn't really in the game, or essentially stuff that is unused. And I think that is very cool right there. And obviously, some of the stuff we still have is in game, because for example, guys, this is the black hole area. And this is literally the black hole daily area, except it's in Corellia. And I don't know when this was added, or if this was at launch. It might have actually been at 1.0. I'm not 100% sure. But this just shows a perfect example that they cut this content and then decided to make it a daily area. It seems like, a lot of issues. Not really a lot of issues, but I guess the budget caused some problems. Essentially, the game might have not done as well as they originally planned, actually kind of like hoped for, in the beginning. I think that's one main leading factor to stuff not being in the game when it was launched, and with expansions. I think they realized, there were some issues, and they weren't able to get everything out there. And that is a little bit disappointing. But you have to remember is that this is a company, and obviously, by being a company, they are going to, gonna have to make some sacrifices, because they don't want to end up wasting money or just doing all that different stuff. Now, there are as well, many articles and stuff from quite a while back, actually, that kind of alludes to the fact that SWTOR was going to have a lot more content even at launch, but they cut it. So that kind of also confirms that that was the original plan, to have a bunch of stuff. So I gotta say, without like even people like buying the game, it seems pretty apparent that BioWare was going to cut some of the content, just a lot of stuff that they had, maybe put it off into an expansion. Some things might have not worked out, and then it might have in the end not been the best. I can't like really say, like I said, because the details are very very vague, because obviously, you know, I'm not like an insider working at BioWare, or I wasn't someone that worked on the game when it was in the beginning, so I really can't say what they had. But based on a multitude of some old interviews, just by the game databases that are online, and just in general, just reading some people's summaries on just some of the content that was actually cut, it was apparent that they were planning different stuff, and they did go to a different direction. I think the biggest thing that a lot of people that I've even seen on Reddit and such that talk about is that originally we were going to have, you know, Yavin 4 and Zyos and all those planets earlier on. We actually were going to see a different story. I also know the arc with the Dreadmasters was going to be different, because people have also talked about how Section X might have been the place where we met the Dreadmasters, actually fought them, and not really just having Orcon, which is pretty interesting. Like I said, this game could have just gone in different directions, and I think that's probably the coolest thing, is kind of learning about this stuff and kind of seeing, you know, there is some different factors that could have, you know, played in, and just could have in general just changed the game landscape as a whole. But one thing that I haven't really gone over yet, and is honestly a big thing that a lot of people always talked about, just specifically cut, is a planet called Botha Y. And this is a planet that I believe was going to come out with Makeb. I'm not 100% sure, certain. It might have come out with the game, but especially that I've personally seen on like Tor community, I have, you know, Jedipedia. I'm pretty sure I have seen dialogue for this planet, and this was something that was cut from the game that I guess was going to expand at Chapter 4, and I think that is pretty cool as well. I also know that just from looking it up, is that on YouTube they had, you know, at least in 2009 for SWTOR, there was a little, I say like timeline archive things, just talking about the different battles and such. And there was one of the battles on, you know, one of those planets. I'm guessing they did have that in mind. Obviously I can't confirm that, but I guess they did have that in mind, that they were going to try to go to that planet, or at least to have it some way in the game. But obviously I guess this stuff didn't work out. But one thing that is good is I guess they did end up reusing Yavin 4 and Zyos now that we actually have them inside the game. But I heard some of that stuff was repurposed. But I mean, it is kind of cool just to know that stuff unfortunately does get you know, on the cutting room floor. But it is cool to kind of hear about this stuff, even though obviously BioWare probably won't ever publicly like acknowledge the existence of this stuff. We do have various articles, and obviously all the stuff that I do mention will be linked in the description down below. But we do have, you know, various game databases. We have even articles from when the game was near launch, talking about stuff that was cut, and in general stuff from the SWTOR YouTube channel that kind of alludes to the fact that they might have had another planet or different stuff along, you know, the lines of that. And I think, just personally for me, I think that is pretty cool. And probably the coolest thing is when I did hear about this area that I'm currently in the video, it really kind of got my interest in the hidden areas, you know, in the actual game, which I made a discussion video on in the past. But kind of like revisiting this area, it did really get me thinking about some of the stuff that they did cut with the game. And I think that's also something cool to talk about, because obviously we don't have stuff in the game that is mentioned, but it is interesting to just know that this game could have played out in a different fashion, and it is kind of cool to see kind of like remnants of that, and kind of have different things to allude to that very fact. But yeah, guys, that's going to be it for this Star Wars Roleplay discussion video. Again, I will have links in the description if you want to explore some of the things, or if you want to go into the game databases, which I would highly recommend if you are curious about, you know, not only just stuff in the game currently, just reading about the different item databases of things, but also learning more about the stuff that isn't in the game and was actually cut out. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.